Now that we're done with price elasticity demand, we are now well settled to talk about other elasticities of demand. The one such elasticity demand we care about is what we call income elasticity of demand, which is looking at income's effect on demand. Income is probably one of the most important factors that affect demand for goods. We say YD, or income elasticity demand, is the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in income. So when you look at the formula for YD's formula is very similar to PED's formula. It is percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. So we're looking at how when your income go up or down, demand for goods change. And we know this, that if the income goes up, for some goods demand goes up. In an earlier discussion when we were talking about factors affecting demand, whenever income goes up, sometimes demand for some goods go up. We call those goods as normal goods. So normal goods are those goods which by definition have a rise in demand whenever income go up. On the other hand, we also looked at inferior goods where when the income went up, the demand actually went down. And such goods we felt were those goods who are not desirable for people who have higher income, because they then move on to what we call better substitutes or expensive substitutes. So if I look at the formula, guys, and if you look at the value of YD, you would agree with me, if your income is going up and your demand is also going up for the case of normal goods, then my YD will turn out to be positive. I'm going to show this in a little while through working. Similarly, if your income is going up and your demand is going down, which means the numerator is going down but the denominator is going up, this means that the value of YD will be negative. So let's look at some examples and let's just focus on first only normal goods. So let me give you some numbers. Let's say your income previously was 100 and now your income has gone up to 120. On the other hand, the quantity of a good that you're buying previously was 50, but now because of a rise in income has gone to 100. So if I look at this example, my percentage change in quantity demanded is turning out to be 100 minus 50 over 50, or 100%. On the other hand, my percentage change in income is turning out to be 20%, because 120 minus 100 over 100 is 20%. Now, that would mean if I use the formula, my YD, which is percentage change in quantity demanded, or 100%, divided by percentage change in income, which is 20%, it is turning out to be plus 5. Now, plus means what? Plus means that the relationship between your quantity demanded and income is positive, and that means the good must be normal in nature. So a positive sign means the good must be normal, and 5 means the value is such that it is very what we call income elastic. Why am I calling it income elastic? Well, because the value is such that the quantity change or percentage change in quantity is greater than percentage change in income. This means this good has a very sensitive relationship or strong relationship with the change in income. Let's talk about another example of an inferior good, because this positive 5 would mean the good is normal, but what about if the good is inferior? How would the numbers look like? Let's say our income is going up again by the same percentage. It was 100 before, and let's say it becomes 120, which means the change in income is 20% positive because income is rising. And let's say this time around, rather than buying a good, more of a good when the income go up, I decided to buy less of this good, because I might move to a better substitute. In this case, let's say if the quantity was 20, because of the rise in income, it's gone to 10, which means my percentage change in quantity demanded will be 10 minus 20 over 20, or minus 50%. If I look at the value of YD in this case, that will be minus 50% over 20%, or minus 2.5. Now the minus would mean that the good is inferior in nature. But I also want to talk about 2.5 would mean since the percentage change in quantity is more than percentage change in income, this is also what we call an income elastic good. So the sign, in other words, what I want to tell you guys is this, that the sign of YD has a significance in terms of it tells us if the good is inferior or normal, because if the sign is positive it's a normal good, and if the sign is negative it's an inferior good. But the value tells us another story. The value tells us if the good is income elastic or income inelastic. Income elastic simply means that the percentage change in quantity demanded has to be greater than percentage change in income. So this would mean whenever we look at a YD, be it negative or positive, has a value which is greater than 1, then the value means that it is very income elastic or very responsive to a change in income. On the other hand, if the value of a good is less than 1, then we're looking at income inelastic good. In other words, if the percentage change in quantity demanded is less than percentage change in income, we're looking at then the value of YD to be less than 1. And I'm ignoring, of course, the minus sign. So, quick sort of recap of some of the values. Let's say your YD is equal to a minus 0.5. A minus 0.5 would mean simply minus would mean it is an inferior good. So I should write this that it is an inferior good because of the sign, but it's an income inelastic inferior good, a good which is income inelastic. Now a good example of a income inelastic inferior good could be, like a basic item, like a staple food, like for example you can call rice to be such, or you can call bread to be such. Now within the category of bread and rice you will find expensive bread, you will find cheap bread, you will find bread for low income people, and so on and so forth. So if you are somebody who's, let's say, consuming a lower quality rice, and let's say when your income go up you move on to a better quality rice, this means that lower quality rice is basically income inelastic but an inferior good. On the other hand, your YD was a positive zero point 0.5. I am looking at now an income inelastic but normal good. Why? Because positive sign would mean it's a normal good, and because it's zero point 0.5 it's still income inelastic. So a good example of this could be, whenever income go up you consume more of such good but not significantly lot, and therefore a better quality rice could be in this category. So one can argue this, that if the YD is lower than 1, be it positive or negative, we're looking at basically necessities, and different quality of necessities. For example, if I'm looking at a minus zero point 0.5, I'm looking at a necessity that is an inferior necessity, which means whenever income go up you may move on to better substitutes. On the other hand, if you're looking at a positive zero point 0.5, you are looking at a better quality necessity, or a normal good, which is a necessity. Similarly, what if your YD value is like positive uh, 2.5? Now this means that it is definitely a normal good, but not only it's a normal good, it's also a luxury good because it's income elastic. As soon as your income go up, you do buy more of this good, but it is also a very high response, which means it must be a luxury good where you will buy more of it when your income go up, and significantly more of it. However, you also buy less of it when your income go down, and significantly less of it. So whenever the YD value is a positive, but more than one value, you're looking at an income elastic good. And a good example of this could be your um, luxury goods. Lastly, if YD is 0, then this is a good where your change in income is not affecting the demand. You may buy the same amount or same quantity. A lot of times, acute necessity like water may come under this category where, despite whatever the change in income, you may still keep on buying the same quantity of water, and therefore it could be regarded as again a necessity, but what we call an absolute necessity could be a good example of this. Now that we know what income elasticity of demand is, we are good to talk about relevance of YD. How is YD important for both firms and government? Well, to start off with firms would like to know whether demand for their product is highly income elastic or whether it's moderately income inelastic or not. So, from a firm's perspective, if an economy is growing and increasing incomes are seen, then firms that are making highly income elastic good, let me write this, from a highly income elastic goods perspective. And what can be a good example of that? Well, one good example of that could be cars. So if you are in a car industry and the economy is growing really fast, then one would like to see that the firm to invest more. Why would they do so? Because the demand for their product is going to rise because they're making a highly income elastic goods, and when incomes are rising, the demand will rise by much more, especially if they are making a luxury good, a good that is expensive. They will see that the requirement for their product will go up, and the firms will therefore expand their capacity to be able to meet the increased demand. So from a firm perspective, knowing how inelastic or elastic their good is as compared to income will become relevant when the incomes are rising or falling, even because that will help them then plan better for the future. From a pricing policy, YD may also become important because let's assume that incomes are falling and let's say we are making what we call normal goods. So, if incomes are falling and we're making normal goods, then one would argue this that there will be a fall in demand, and in order to make sure that the firm can arrest this fall in demand, the firm could actually lower price. So, when they lower the price, they can increase the quantity by much more because the goods are normal in nature, and therefore they can make sure that they can raise their sales in a time when the economy is going through what we call sometimes a recession or falling income. Lastly, guys, government is also keen in knowing what the YD is because government is planning for various sectors in terms of employment, in terms of training, and so on. So let's say that there is, a rising income taking place. So the economy is going through what we call economic boom, and let's assume that incomes are rising in an economy. Now this would mean that the economic significance and viability of the income inelastic sectors will shrink in the long run for this kind of a growing economy, and so some trainers or some workers in these sectors may lose their jobs and will require retraining. A good example of this is the food industry. When you look at food industry in developed countries, it's actually shrinking. It's not that people are not eating food that much. It's just that other sectors are growing much faster. Those sectors which are income elastic, like car industry or computer industry, technology, and so on, all of them are doing really well. But when it comes to agriculture or food, that industry is not seeing the demand to grow by that much. And as a result of that, developed countries are finding that a lot of farmers are leaving industry for other sectors now. So government has a role to play here because this is a sector that has an economic significance, and if you want to save this sector, then you may need to provide support to these sectors, you may need to train workers, you may need to also introduce some technology and do things that can make the industry to do better.